Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And today I'm going to talk about Sandman Season 1, Episode 11, in particular the part of it that is Calliope, rather than A Dream of Cats. But Calliope, Memories of Ice by Stephen Erikson, the book 3 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and The Lord of the Rings. Why not throw in a classic? So I'm going to draw a point of connection between all three of these things. And you might think that's a bit strange because, obviously, Memories of Ice, written in the noughties, The Sandman, and it was a epic fantasy. The Sandman, written by Neil Gaiman, and I think this particular issue, it might have been in 1990, in and around 89, 90, but horror DC comic under the, and it was when they were starting the Vertigo imprint, but so different genre, different style of story, different medium. And The Lord of the Rings, classic 1955 Tolkien. Like, what more do you need to know? So, what is this point that I am going to make between all of these things? And the point I want to discuss is the different ways that the authors address the lure of power, the desire to use power when you have it, and how difficult it is to give up that power. And I think that these books, Tolkien actually, this is a big focus of The Lord of the Rings, obviously, which is why it's included. But also, this is part of the story of Calliope. It's not the major aspect of it. That's an entirely different discussion. But there's an aspect of Memories of Ice about this as well. So let me start with Calliope. I think Calliope, then we'll go Memories of Ice, and then we'll go Lord of the Rings, because the Lord of the Rings caps it all off. In Calliope, spoilers, by the way, in Calliope, Richard Maddock gains possession of Calliope, the muse of, I can't remember, she's the muse of song, but she is a muse, and he has been given possession of her, and she is a fully realized being. She is a divine being, but she is fully realized. She is flesh and blood, and she is there. And he gains possession of her. And he has been told that she can inspire him because he has writer's block. He wrote a brilliant debut novel, is now 2 years behind on the follow-up novel, and has writer's block. He hasn't even started. And he doesn't know what to do. And he is absolutely desperate. And he ends up getting possession of a muse. And she is his slave. And he asks her, when he has locked her up in this room, I want your help. I need to finish this. And of course, Calliope says, if you free me, then you can ask. Because of course, as a slave, there's no point in asking her. She has no choice in the matter. She's a slave. She's a prisoner. And Richard Maddock looks at her, and you can see he is absolutely torn. In that moment, he knows with absolute clarity that freeing her is the right thing to do. There is no doubt. He knows it. Calliope knows it. The audience knows it. And he also knows he really needs that second book. He needs her to say yes. And if he lets her go, there's no guarantee that she'll say yes. She could go, thought about it? No. And then he's still going to have his problem. He's still going to need his book. He's still going to need this inspiration. He's still going to be 2 years late. And there's no way out. And we see this dilemma in his head. We see him momentarily wrestling with it. And then we hear the classic line of self-deception and self-justification. Of course I will free you. Just as soon as I've written this book. Just help me with this one book, and then I will free you. And every audience member knows he's not going to do it. There is no way he is going to give her up. There is no way he is going to let her go after just one. He is going to keep her prisoner. That was his moment to do the right thing, and he failed the test. We know it. Calliope knows it. The only person who doesn't know it is Richard, because in that moment, he maybe honestly, maybe dishonestly thinks, yeah, as soon as I get this one done, then I'll let her go, because he's lying to himself. And while obviously there's a whole other part to this. This is not the major aspect of the story that particularly that the TV show goes into. It emphasizes a particular aspect of the story and makes it very powerful and very poignant. And I would recommend watching it. It is distressing and harrowing in all the right ways. But I just want to talk about this point about the self-deception, about this lure, this tension that is created, because Richard knows what the right thing to do is. And he knows there's still a chance that if he lets her go, that Calliope may be very grateful that she's been rescued, and he let her go and said, you are absolutely right. I am so sorry. Please go free. There you go. You are now free. If you could please help me, I would appreciate it, but I understand if you don't want to do it. We all know that is exactly the right thing. He should free her. There's no question. And he knows it. But he deludes himself into thinking, just this once. Just this once. Because we know that is going to lead on to, well, now that I've finished this book, I just need one more. Because this book is successful, now they want to follow up to this. So I just one more. And then once that's done, there's going to be, oh, well, they've asked me to do a screenplay, so I just need one more. And the more you get used to using this power, the more you get used to abusing this power, the less it tortures you, the less you think about it, the less you care, because all that matters is your gratification, your use of power, what it can do for you. And you don't think about the cost anymore. You don't think about the penalty anymore. You don't think about any of that anymore. And you almost reflexively, we can imagine him reflexively each and every time going, it's just one more, and then that'll be it. And it almost becomes a refrain. And we can imagine this going through his head every single time. It's just this once, just this one more time. And that is the setup for this. But when we move on to Memories of Ice, I think you may guess the moment in Memories of Ice that I want to talk about. And it's this moment with Itkovian and the Talana Mass. And the reason I bring this up is one of the things that you frequently see in online discourse about it is Itkovian should have waited. Itkovian was faced with the Talana Mass, who for hundreds of thousands of years have been trapped, separated from living by this pain, this sorrow, this suffering. And he relieves them of it. He removes that burden from them so that they can be themselves again. And as a result, essentially frees them. Because he looks at them, he looks at how they are being used, how they have been enslaved, how they are a tool for the empire. And he treats them as living sentient beings and says, no more, no, I will take your pain, I will take your suffering. And he does it in that moment, and he does it without flinching. But we know that Itkovian is a trained military commander. We know that Itkovian knows they are facing a big battle in the coming days. They have to take Coral. And he is about to deprive them of one of their strongest military assets. He knows all of this. He's not stupid, but he does it anyway. And why does he do it? Because it's the right thing to do. And he doesn't make a song and dance about it. He doesn't lie to himself about it, going, well, it'll just be this once. We'll take Coral and then I'll free you. Because he knows, in exactly the same way that the Malazans have always used the Talanamas, there's always one more battle. There's always one more army that needs to be fought. There's always one more thing that they need the Talanamas to do. Itkovian also knows this. And so he does the thing that we hope that we would do in that instance, which is he does the right thing. He frees them. And yet, time and time again in online forums, we see the argument that Itkovian should have waited, that Itkovian made the wrong decision, that Itkovian, he caused those bridge burners to die, because if he hadn't let the Talanamas go, they would have been fine. But if we're honest with ourselves, if we think about it from Itkovian's position, we see what he is faced with. But if we look at it from the Talanamas position, we know with an absolute certainty that it is the right thing to do, and it is the right thing to do in that instant, because it was the right thing to do hundreds of years ago. It was the right thing to do thousands of years ago. He frees them. And we rail against it and we argue against it because the cost of that decision is that some of the characters that we love pay for it. Just as for Richard, if he had freed Calliope, or Calliope, the cost would have been his writing career was over. That he wouldn't have the book, he'd have to give the advance back, his dreams are shattered. That's a cost. And he weighed up that his future, his happiness, his security, the fame, the adulation, the wealth, the prestige, all of that was far more important than the freedom of one person. Itkovian makes that decision and goes, yeah, this could save a lot of lives, but I'm not condemning them for a second more, and makes the right decision. And so you can see why I pair those two up. It's the same moment, but we see it play out in very different ways. And the reason I brought up The Lord of the Rings is it's one of the fascinating aspects of The Lord of the Rings, because we see this as the lure of the ring. But Gandalf rejects it. Galadriel rejects it. Elrond rejects it. Because if they had it in their hand, if they were Itkovian standing with this army to command, if they were Richard Maddock needing to get this thing done and Calliope being there, they understand that temptation. And so they don't even want the option of that temptation. They reject it out of hand before they would have to make that decision. And then we see what happens to Frodo. We see him fight against it time and time again, fight against the lure to put on the ring, the lure to use it. We see that struggle played out time and time again. We see what it does to Boromir, because he would only use it for good. He would use it to defend Gondor. But we already know how that plays out. Isildur's Bane, it's in the name. We know that is the lure of the ring. Just use it just this once. It'll really help. It'll save a lot of lives. And you're doing good with it. It's important. It'll help other people. It'll save other people. Just do it just this once. Well, there's this other problem that's just come up. We can maybe deal with that as well. So just use it just this one more time. And we can see this temptation, this lure of power in these various different stories. And obviously, they're framed in different ways. They're talking about different aspects of this question, different aspects of different types of power, different types of temptation. But ultimately, it keeps boiling down to that decision in the moment. Is the hero strong enough to do the right thing, even when it is inconvenient? Even when it is going to cost you personally, even when it will cost people you care about personally. And it is, as the old saying goes, it's easy to do the right thing when it benefits you, but it is so much harder to do the right thing when you know it is going to cost you. So I just wanted to talk about those three aspects of this because it is a fascinating moral question that gets raised in this new episode of The Sandman. And we see it in Memories of Ice, and we see it again extrapolated and played with in so many different ways in The Lord of the Rings. And it's not an easy one. And I hope this gives people who think that Itkovian made the wrong decision, it mightn't convince you that he made the right decision. But I hope it gives you some food for thought about why it is such a difficult position that he is placed in and why there are downsides to doing the expedient thing. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I will see you in the next one.